there's a kind of a fundamental basis for post-traumatic slave syndrome. How many of you are familiar with post-traumatic stress disorder? But when we start talking about chattel slavery, we're not talking about one trauma. We're not talking about a specific event. We're talking about generations of trauma with no intervention. Based on what I know about sugar plantations, tobacco, the Caribbean, what I know about American chattel slavery and the plantations there, does anyone right now ever recall mental health assistance to slaves? Anybody remember sending in the therapist after I sold off your son, daughter, raped folks? At any point? Never. Second question. After slavery was officially over, now you're free. Anybody remember any therapy then? We know it's been rough, it's been deep for you, it's been difficult. We're going to do a little group therapy. Anybody remember that? That would be no. Number three, after slavery officially ended, both in the States, in the Caribbean, the British ended, do you remember whether or not trauma continued? Did the trauma continue for people of African descent? I need to know. Okay, so now let's do the math. Hundreds of years of trauma, no treatment.
Can you hear? I just want to, Nemesis, you said audio was cutting out. Can you hear? I just want to make sure I can start it back over. Let me know if y'all can hear the audio. Now it's back. All right. I need to start it back. I'll start it back over. So we can make sure we get everything. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Yes. She goes hard. One of my favorites. Yes. And welcome.
There's a kind of a fundamental basis for post-traumatic slave syndrome. How many of you are familiar with post-traumatic stress disorder? But when we start talking about chattel slavery, we're not talking about one trauma. We're not talking about a specific event. We're talking about generations of trauma with no intervention. Based on what I know about sugar plantations, tobacco, the Caribbean, what I know about American chattel slavery and the plantations there, does anyone right now ever recall mental health assistance to slaves? Anybody remember sending in the therapist after I sold off your son, daughter, raped folks? At any point? Never. Second question. After slavery was officially over, now you're free. Anybody remember any therapy then? We know it's been rough, it's been deep for you, it's been difficult. We're going to do a little group therapy. Anybody remember that? That would be no. Number three, after slavery officially ended, both in the States, in the Caribbean, the British ended, do you remember whether or not trauma continued? Did the trauma continue for people of African descent? I need to know. Okay, so now let's do the math. Hundreds of years of trauma, no treatment. Freed, more trauma, no treatment. What do you do the math? Do you think there may be residual impacts of that trauma? Of course there is. It didn't end, friends, and it hasn't ended yet. So I think on one point, African people and people of African descent are extremely resilient. Matter of fact, I think we're a miracle. Far be it for us to pathologize or to look and cast this idea of weak and sick people. Oh, on the contrary, I'm profoundly resilient because we've done everything we've done thus far with no help, with not even the ability to have this discussion. As though it were possible, we escaped injury in all those hundreds of years and the years that follow. So this kind of journey I'm going to take you on is going to be one that really gives a perspective on what this trauma was, what it looks like, and clinically, what is post-traumatic stress disorder? What does it look like? Now, let me give you a little snapshot. We'll get into it in more depth a little later. But post-traumatic stress disorder, if in fact you are diagnosed with that, again, remember, direct or indirect trauma, here are some of the symptoms. A feeling of foreshortened future. Now, what does that mean? A feeling, well, you're not going to live long. How many of you are running into young people that don't believe they're going to make it past their 20s? Feeling of foreshortened future. Exaggerated startle response. Outbursts of anger. Difficulty falling or staying asleep. Hypervigilance. Right? These are symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. This is like DSM stuff, Diagnostic Statistical Manual Mental Disorders. It's in there. And there's a whole listing of all these symptoms. Now, I want to roll it back so you can understand what the transmission theory is, because I'm going to talk about transmission. So how does a person that's been traumatized by post-traumatic, literally has a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder, and can we, if we are logical and we are reasonable people, assume that a fair number of Africans had to have had post-traumatic stress disorder? You think? I'm not talking about us, I'm talking about them. Untreated, though, right? Okay, so now let's do the math. Mom who saw dad sold or sister raped has post-traumatic stress disorder. Still mom, though, right? Only mom now has outbursts of anger, feeling of foreshortened future, difficulty falling or staying asleep, hypervigilance. That would be mom. Now, Johnny or Mary or Shaquisha did not have the original trauma. But what are they learning? This is called social learning theory. What am I normalizing? Exaggerated startle response, outbursts of anger. Are you following me? So I didn't have to be traumatized. Now, the other thing is, do you think Johnny and Mary got traumatized too? Do you see? So what happens in your environment, you learn from the significant others in your environment. And if they're broken, guess what you're going to be? You're learning from broken people. And you're normalizing that behavior. And then it becomes, years later, 2008, that's their culture.
Dr. Joy DeGrew doing her thing, right? So I love the way she explained that. We're talking about something that has affected people of African descent, has affected the diaspora for generations. We're talking about epigenetics as well, right? Trauma passed down, psychological trauma, physical trauma, emotional trauma, all types of trauma has been passed down from generation to generation to generation throughout the diaspora. And there has been no healing. And because of no healing, it has manifested itself into negative perspectives, negative behaviors, negative effects, and negative outcomes. And I will take it a step further and say she's explaining some of the behaviors of the diaspora and why Black people don't like each other throughout the diaspora. And that's funny I said that, because that's one of the things that the brothers are talking about in the video. But once again, I think that's why we do have some of the diaspora wars that we have, because of the trauma that we've all experienced. And a lot of us have especially different types of trauma, depending on where you are, but it's still trauma nonetheless. And it's unhealed trauma from generation to generation to generation, and manifest itself into vacant esteem. So we don't like ourselves, and we don't like those who remind us of ourselves, those who we could recreate ourselves with. And, we don't like each other. And so that shows in how we treat each other. That shows in how we talk about each other. That shows on how some people with Black skin would rather assimilate and be a part of the white structure rather than be with their own people. Like I was thinking earlier today, because we're talking about a mindset too, a post-traumatic slave syndrome mindset, right? It's also a mindset that would breed dependency. It's a mindset that would breed somebody to be what we would call a sellout, a Sambo, right? And so I remember there was a There was a series on Netflix years ago, and it was about a plantation in a slave plantation in Colombia, and the cast were, you know, black people who speak Spanish and all the things there. And I remember it was one episode where, it was called Palenque. That was the name of it. It was called Palenque. The whites and the slave masters were trying to find the Palenque because they had run-ins with the Maroons, and they were trying to find the Palenque, and they couldn't find the Palenque. And then one day, one of the little boys and a white girl who was raised in the Palenque, they ventured to the town where the white people live, and they were spotted. And so the white people had a spy follow them. And this was the significant part, right, with the spy. So the spy is following them, and the spy gets to a point to where he follows them from a distance and watch them go into the Palenque. And the spy has a choice to make. The spy could be free and never come back. He could join the Palenque or do whatever and be free and never come back. Or he can go tell on the black folk. The mindset, right? The mindset, because we're talking about at this point, this is like the 1800s. So seeds are planted, and more seeds are being planted, more trauma is being planted. So instead of being free, he chose to go snitch, and the Palenque was destroyed. He could have been free. He was so dependent upon the white folk that he said, forget my freedom, I'm gonna go snitch on the rest of these black folk so they could be enslaved too, right? We're talking about a mindset, and that was in Colombia, right? And so that helps us understand what has happened to us as a whole, right? White supremacy is a global system. It's not something that just affects us here in America. It's not just a Black American problem. It's a diaspora problem, right? And we have to understand what has happened to all of us. We were all victims of white supremacy. We're all victims of white supremacy. The descendants of slaves, the effects of the descendants of slavery don't just affect us here. It affects us throughout the diaspora. 3 to 4 continents were destroyed because of Columbus and all that stuff there. Doer of L, I hate when people claim that this culture of oppression is Black culture. This culture is not our original culture. Well, it may not be our original culture, but it's the culture we have. It's what happens when you are stripped of everything, when you are enslaved, stripped of everything. It's the culture we have. People develop culture. Said we had the we sick, yeah. Free to do what many sellouts are clear in their mind of the overall state. A sellout has no faith. Hey, basically, that's why he did what he did. That's exactly why Buddy did what he did. Buddy said, forget getting away from these white folk. I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna make sure the rest of y'all can endure this stuff too. Now you right, I get it. I ain't disagreeing. There you go. We sick. There you go. That Buddy was wild, man. So I mean, and back to this comment, I mean, it is what it is. It's the culture we have. I mean, what are we going to be ashamed of the culture that we develop? We like all human beings, we develop culture. This is the culture we have. We're all under the system of white supremacy. Unfortunately, our culture was developed behind enemy lines under the system of white supremacy. This is what we have. Can we improve it? Yes, but it's the culture we have. So let's go ahead and get up into this conversation with this brother Sarah Garvey. And let's think critically about what's being said. It ain't no beef. We ain't trying to start no diaspora war stuff, but I did, think it. I ain't gonna lie. My first thought was I thought it was interesting that a non-Black American was critiquing the history and the creation of Black Americans. That was my first thought, but then I had to watch it. I watched it a couple of times to make sure I can get a better grasp of what's being said and not just be reactive and things like that. So I thought it was an interesting conversation, but nevertheless a good conversation for us to jump into. So let's go ahead and do what we do. The brother Sarah Garvey, and I don't know the other gentleman, but shout out to both of them. Of course, we might not agree with everything, but it's okay to disagree politely or with some sense, civilly. Renee, what's going on? How you doing? B1 FBA, we up in this thing, doing what we do, how we do what we do. You already know. Thank you for being here. He says, I tend to agree with Neela Fuller take on the topic of coaching. I mean, we all do, but this is what we got, though. So we got to improve it. We got to improve it. So let's get into this conversation.
People in America were taken, like, think of it like Frankenstein. You know, like Frankenstein would take the arm from this place and the leg from this place and the head from this place. And they were created into what they are.
What's the form of eugenics, Kobe?
They're severed from what they were. You see, the black people on the continent of Africa, they still have, even though they were colonized and you know, enslaved on their continent, they still, because they were in their continent, they got to hold on to some remnants of their culture, their language, their foods, stuff like that, right? So they, even though they were colonized, they weren't totally severed from who they were. The black American is severed from who they were and then cultivated and created into this being. So they don't have a natural language. Their language is the language of the person that created them. Do you get what I'm saying? They don't have a natural religion. Their religion is the religion of the person that created them. They don't have everything that they have has been cultivated by the people that created them. Black people don't like each other.
That's one of the things I wanted to talk about. Why don't we like each other, brother?
Black people don't like each other. And it's shown within the attitudes and the behaviors that we act out towards each other. Generally, I would say in the West.
So honest, man. I love that about you.
Listen, black people don't like each other, right? Black people generally don't like each other. I said some of the worst, let's say some of the worst people that have looked at me on the street have been from black people. And I'm like, I don't even know you, bro. What?
But even when he's going through that, that's why I started with the post-traumatic slave syndrome video. That's why I wanted to lay some groundwork on the mental state of black people, but make sure the focus is not just on us in America, but look at black people throughout the diaspora, right? Because yes, black people, we don't like each other, right? We've all been conditioned to hate ourselves and hate those around us. Read the works of Frantz Fanon. Read the works of those who are outside of America, who were able to diagnose what has happened to the African mind, to the mind of black people throughout the diaspora, right? What Frantz Fanon writes about and what Carter G. Woodson writes about is pretty much the same thing. It's just from different lenses, because Carter G. Woodson was here in America and Frantz Fanon was in France and Martinique, but they're pretty much writing about the same thing. How do we know? Because we just got through reading Black Skin, White Mask, and we're reading the Miseducation of the Negro right now, and they're not saying anything different, just from a different lens. Says, now when you said we have to improve, I wholeheartedly agree, but too many think the bad behavior. No, I agree. I look, I would Negro behavior, Negro mindset behavior. And I'm saying that because I'm trying to reduce saying the N-word on here because they be tripping. But Negro mindset behavior is one of the greatest invention, of white supremacy. To create the Negro, to create that destructive person, and not the Negro, the N-word, to create that and to make sure that that continues is one of their greatest feats. I wholeheartedly agree. But that's one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons why we don't like each other. But we also have to come to grips that N-word is not just something that affects us in America. It's not just American. N-words are diasporic. They're diasporic. The mental shaping of people of African descent, it has happened of the diaspora. It happened to all of us. That's how you colonize a whole continent. The whole continent was colonized. The whole continent. All of the Caribbean were colonized. All of the Americas were colonized by these people. We all have our minds blended up and mixed up. And that's why we treat each other the way we treat each other. That's why we talk about each other the way we talk about each other. That's why you're right, the Willie Lynch syndrome. The Willie Lynch syndrome. If we want to put a name on it, there it is, right? There it is. And remember, the story is that that didn't come from the Americas. It came from the Caribbean to the Americas, right? So I'm just saying, you already know it does still live on, and it lives on throughout the diaspora. And that's my point. That's my point that I want to hammer home today is this is not just something that affects us over here. Why do you think we struggle with Pan-Africanism? Why do you think we struggle with any type of nationalism, any type of anywhere throughout the diaspora, anywhere Black people are? Because for the most part, Black people outside of the continent, Black people are behind enemy lines. If you're outside of the continent, for the most part, you're behind enemy lines. And even if you're on the continent, you're still where the enemy controls things. So white people still have a great deal of control over the lives and the mindsets of Black people. That's why we behave the way we behave. So I'm just saying, you're right. Save who can be saved. Save those who want it. They don't want it, we can't mess with them. Sanika is the 5-starter, has the great video about the N-word and say why we got to check it out. Got to check it out.
What is this disdain that you got in your heart for me? And so when you look at, you know, some of the crime and stuff and what happens with the crime, you say to yourself,
intraracial.
Intraracial.
Yeah, nearly 90%
of crime is intraracial, meaning that it's white on white, Chinese on Chinese, Black on Black.
The highest number in the Black community.
Yeah, because Black people don't like it, but Black people have been taught to hate each other. Right. They've been taught to.
Right.
So you don't think we can end that conditioning? Because look, brother, I can show you something right now. Right, yeah? Whereas I kind of say Black people, the nature of Black people, I'm going to read something out very quickly. This is from Up From Slavery, because I find it really important to understand. This is kind of I kind of read, and you know, so what people talk about slavery, there are very different stories of slavery and ideas around slavery. Booker T. Washington is saying they were anxious. I'll give you a bit of a scenario. This is when, you know, the war, the war to free the slaves, like the war of the South.
Yeah, yes. Do you mean the civil?
Yeah, civil war.
Okay.
They were just as anxious to assist in the nursing of the family relatives of the wounded. So Black slaves were just as anxious to assist in the nursing of the soldiers who were literally fighting to keep them in slavery, right?
But that's what he's saying goes to this comment, goes to B1's comment, right? All right. Before the transatlantic slave trade, before the colonization, there was tribalism, right? So we're going back to remembering that there has never been a time. I haven't found any information. If you find it, let me know. We have a whole change of opinion, but as of right now, I haven't found any information to show of any united thought of the total continent, all Africans throughout the continent looking at themselves as one. So there was always some kind of separatism, some type of tribalism that existed. It exists amongst humans. It's a human thing, right? It's a human thing. That's what human beings do. Humans click up, humans tribe up with those who are like-minded, right? Those who share similarities, right? So that tribalism was played upon. And because that tribalism was played upon, it increased the distances that we had between each other. And now our minds are all blended up. We have to have a total revamping of our mindsets to get to something like this. We got to have it. We got to do it. It says we struggle with the Pan-Africanism because the many shysters that have conned our people. Hey, don't get me started. Nemesis. Get Dua trying to get me started on Umar tonight. See, Nemesis, get him, Nemesis. I've said, because you know, Dua, I don't mess with Umar. Now I'm just playing, but nah, you're right though. You're right. But I also think that's why we have to wag our fingers at the scammers, and we have to wag our fingers at the followers, at the blind followers. We have to wag our fingers at them too, especially the adults. Grow up and start thinking for yourselves. Start to see the bull that's in front of you. I don't like his generalization of black people. Now all of us hate each other. I was never raised. And well, that's one of the things that we're getting into. I'm glad because this is a conversation for us to think about what's being said. You already know, right? Because all of us don't hate each other. I'm a prime example of that as well. I've always called, if you look like me, you black, you family. I look at all as family, but I also understand all skin and kin. But nah, I'm with you, Renee. Oh damn. Oh, he gonna be there all week. Well, you know, Candace Owens and Officer Tatum them here for the Brexit thing. They're supposed to be around here for the Brexit thing, FAMU homecoming. So you know, all the grifters and scammers out. Say we need to wag some damn fingers at. Not right. Now I'm with you. I have more smoke for the stupid followers than I do for the scammers. I got more smoke for them. But yeah, but get back to this though. Please hit that like button.
Basically, anyway, it's the nature of them.
White soldiers.
Yes, white soldiers.
Okay.
So some of the slaves would even beg for the privilege of sitting up at night to nurse their wounded masters. This tenderness and sympathy on the part of those held in bondage was a result of their kindly and generous nature. In order to defend and protect the women and children who were left on the plantations when the white males went to war, the slaves would have laid down their lives. So the slaves would lay down lives. So conditioning. So I mentioned because I want to talk about conditioning. It's about being taught to think a certain way. So now,
right. That reminds me of, and it's not necessarily. It's similar. That reminds me of the story of Ya Asante, where the Ashanti had to fight the British, and the British was just coming in, taking everything, and they took the king. They took the golden. The sacred golden stool was stolen by the British. And the men were afraid to go to war. And Ya Asante, the fearless woman, had to rally the troops and stir the men up to get them to go fight, right? But we're talking about a mindset that was instilled in African people, period, right? And you have to work to reverse that mindset. We have to work to be better. We have to want to be better, especially if you get to a point where your light switch comes on and you realize what's happening around you. Like I think that was Dick Gregory say, when you put the magic goggles on, you can't take them off. When you see the truth, when you take that red pill, you can't go back. When you see the truth, right? But that's when you start doing better as well. And I think that's where we fall short, is we get caught up in the rhetoric and the back and forth and the debates and stuff like that. And we don't put enough energy into being better. If black people throughout the diaspora put enough energy into being better, we could eliminate the system of white supremacy easily, because we would be together. We could eliminate white supremacy, and then all other supremacies that try to come up against us, we could put them in check if we just chose to be better. You know?
There's a book called The Miseducation of the Negro.
Oh yeah, I read that.
The Miseducation of the Negro, and in it he says that because of the conditioning of the quote-unquote Negro, right? Negroes were used to go into the big house via the back door. They weren't allowed to go in via the front door, right? And he's actually said something that was quite funny. He said, if there's no back door, a Negro will build a back door and then go through it, because he knows that much that he's not allowed in through the front door. And so a conditioning in the Americas has been done to black people. I said,
well, and see, that's what I tend to correct him and extend it. It's not, yes, there was a conditioning in the Americas, but that was a conditioning for black people throughout the diaspora. Throughout the diaspora, black people behave like that. The N-word folk ain't just in America. I know we focus on it in America, but look at the behavior of black people throughout the diaspora. Like what the movie Hotel Rwanda, what that was about, the Hutus and the Tutsi and the Hutus and the Tutsis and the genocide that was happening there. Right? Like there are examples throughout the diaspora of black people having that intra fighting against each other, and then the fighting against other groups of black people. We do that throughout the diaspora, and that's the thing that I want people to understand is not just a thing. When Carter G. Woodson was writing this book, when Dr. Joy DeGruy was writing her book, they were not just talking about in the Americas. Even for Dr. Joy DeGruy, if you go to her website and look at her definition of what PTSS is, it says PTSS is a theory that explains the etiology of many of the adaptive survival behaviors of African American communities throughout the United States and the diaspora.